Hey guys, this is Dima Aryeh from DroidDog.com, and today we'll be reviewing the Samsung Galaxy Note 8.0. Now the Note 8.0 is the newest tablet in Samsung's lineup and the newest Note device from Samsung, and it follows the same basic design as the Note 2, as you can see right here. It has the same 1.6 GHz quad-core processor, the same 2 GB of RAM, an 8-inch display, which is slightly bigger than an Nexus 7 at 1280 by 800, so it's actually decently high resolution. And let's look at the box here for the specs. We also have a 5 megapixel camera with a 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera, a 4600 milliamp hour battery, and the S Pen, which is the most important thing. And also, it's wise to mention that this thing runs on Android 4.1.2 Jelly Bean. Now let's take a tour around the device. The front is dominated by the 8-inch display. At the top you'll see two sensors, there's no LED. And at the bottom you'll see that there are three physical keys, a home button and two capacitive buttons, which are menu and back. Unfortunately, they do not have on-screen buttons, and the use of capacitive buttons is quite a hassle, as I'll explain later. On the left side you have a simple little cover for the micro SD slot, which is great to have expandable memory. At the top you have a simple 3.5 millimeter. On this side, on the right, you have a power button, a volume rocker, and an IR port. It has an IR port for controlling TVs and stuff, which is really cool. And at the bottom you have two speakers, a micro USB port, and of course the S Pen, which the Note lineup is famous for. And around back you'll see it's the design that's very similar to the Galaxy Note 2, with only a camera hump and the rest is clean. It does not have an LED flash, unlike some of the older Samsung tablets. Now I personally love the 8-inch display size. The 7-inch is slightly too small for me, even though I love my Nexus 7, and the 10-inch is obviously very big for a lot of people. I think that 8 inches is the perfect size, and I love how they designed it. They also designed it to be very, very thin, much thinner than a Nexus 7, as you can see, so it's very comfortable to hold in the hand, and it's very light. The back is glossy, so it doesn't provide all that much grip, but it's not extremely slippery, which is great. Unfortunately, it is thin plastic, so it does bend slightly, just like all Samsung devices do. You probably know that. And of course, we can't talk about the review without talking about the hardware keys. They decided to use three buttons at the bottom, a physical home button and two capacitive buttons. Now, I personally hate this design choice in a tablet because when you're holding it landscape, obviously your thumbs are going to be hitting the back button constantly. If not the back button, then the menu button. And the worst part is that you cannot use the home button with the S Pen. You cannot press it down or you might damage the tip of the S Pen. However, the good news is that the two capacitive keys towards the sides actually do react to the S Pen, which is very new to a Note series. So, unlike the Note 2, they actually work. Now, unlike older Samsung tablets, this tablet does have a micro SD slot and a standard micro USB port, so you can charge it from any micro USB cable. Older Samsung tablets did have that proprietary 30-pin adapter. Well, that's no more. And with 16 gigabytes of built-in memory instead of 8, like some lower-end tablets, and a micro SD slot on the side, you can expand your memory as much as you want, and I think that's a fantastic addition to what's a pretty damn good tablet. Though the display is the perfect size, it does have a few issues. The model that I do have right now has an issue where the screen gets kind of wavy. I can't really show it off on camera, but if you look in my review, I will link to a video I took earlier. But I think that might be just mine because other people that have this tablet do not experience it. Also, when the screen is completely black, you will notice that there is some light bleed around the edges. It's very minor, but it's there. Otherwise, the display is vibrant. It's very bright. It gets very bright for outdoor viewing. I'm actually surprised how bright it gets. And it's just a really nice display. It could be better, of course. At 8 inches with a 1280 by 800 resolution, it's a little low on pixel density. But with something like the Nexus 7, you get the same resolution in a smaller package, and it looks better. And next to the Note 2, of course, they have pretty much the same resolution. This one is slightly narrower. And you're getting much better pixel density in a phone. For $400, I think that the Galaxy Note 8.0 should have something better, like a 1080p display. With 1080p displays being sold in smartphones right now, I think it would have been a good decision to put it in. And one more thing, this tablet does have a built-in GPS chip, so you can use it as a navigation device if you have offline maps, which is fantastic because I know some tablets don't have GPS chips built in. Now comes the rant about build quality. As a person who's owned many Samsung devices, everybody knows that build quality isn't perfect on Samsungs. Obviously, they use all plastic design except for the front. All of this is thin plastic. You can hear how hollow it sounds. It makes for a very light device, which is absolutely fantastic. It makes it very comfortable to hold for extended periods of time. However, it does give it some bend. And some people have reported creaks, though I've had no creaking. It's very solid. And that makes people think that it's a cheap device. I personally don't think plastic is cheap. I think it's resilient and cheap to make and feels decent in the hand, but it could be better. Of course it could be better. Things like the iPad mini do use metal construction, and they're still fairly light, so I do wish that it was slightly better constructed, but I can't really complain. This thing's constructed pretty well, just like all Samsung devices are in my opinion. The software on this tablet is a little strange. First of all, you'll notice that it doesn't use the tablet UI or the hybrid UI from the Nexus 7. It's a standard phone UI. Even the notification bar is full size, as you can see. It looks exactly like a Note 2. You can argue that this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a matter of preference, really. However, this does mean that you're getting just a big phone launcher. However, apps do run like on a tablet. For example, they have the Nexus 7 UI when they have a bar to the side. For example, in Gmail, you can see that there are two bars. So the only way you're getting the phone UI is on the home screen, and it doesn't go anywhere else. However, some people won't like the giant notification bar. I can say that it's not the greatest thing, and I prefer the Nexus 7. For reference, here's the Nexus 7. This is the hybrid UI. Not only does it have on-screen keys, but as you can tell, it has a tiny notification bar and toggles on the other side. They could have used the same UI, especially on a slightly bigger screen, or they could have gone full 10-inch UI, which I know would have upset many people, but they decided to go with a giant phone UI. With TouchWiz, you're always getting something extra. There are a ton of features packed into this device. For example, my favorite feature is multi-window. If you want to use two apps at once, you hold back, then you could toss in, for example, Chrome and YouTube. This is one of my favorite features of this device. You can do two things at once, and it looks fantastic and works fantastic. Of course, you have to have supported apps to use it, but luckily a lot of Google apps are supported, a lot of third-party apps have brought in support. For example, Reddit is Fun has support, along with a few others. Most of the features reside in the settings menu. The first feature, as you see, is obviously Easy Mode. Easy Mode is if you wanted to give this tablet to your grandmother. She would find it a lot easier to use because, well, let's show you actually. It makes everything nice and big and removes a lot of the buttons, so you can go into your apps standard, but you also have these giant widgets which allow you to use favorite apps, favorite settings, and I know Easy Mode on the Galaxy line of phones also has favorite contacts. Basically, it makes things a little easier. However, once you get into an app, there will be no real Easy Mode because this is only for Samsung's own software. However, most of you are going to be using basic mode, obviously, because this is the standard layout. This is what everyone is used to. A few other features are in display, which is like customizing your notification panel, multi-window, page buddy, which I keep off because I don't like having a constant notification with a list of apps I don't want to use for the S Pen or for plugging in headphones. It has reading mode, which optimizes the screen for reading instead of having to stare at a white screen with black text. It makes it a little easier on the eyes. And of course, the staple of all Samsung ROMs, Smart Stay. This will allow the front-facing camera to track your eyes so it sees if you're staring at the screen. If you're still staring at the screen, it will not let it time out, which is an awesome feature. There are also a lot of features for motion, S Pen, all the stuff you'd find on a Galaxy Note 2. Motion stuff is palm swipe to capture, so if you want a screenshot, you just do this. There you go. S Pen, all the standard stuff, Air View, pop-up note, battery saving, which you can uncheck if you want to use an S Pen from a different device while the S Pen is still in its housing, meaning it will detect the S Pen even when it's stowed away. So if I take the S Pen from a Galaxy Note 2, I could still use it. It works just fine. And of course you have compatibility with Samsung's docks. They have a standard multimedia dock which has a 3.5mm jack and charges it, or they have the new Smart Dock which has an HDMI port and USB ports. This has full support for it, just like the Galaxy Note 2. There are also a lot of apps that they included. For example, the new Awesome Note HD app is straight from iOS. It's currently an exclusive on Android, only to the Note 8.0, so if you want it on a different device, unfortunately you'll have to wait or rip the APK out, but that actually doesn't work too well on smaller devices. However, this is slightly laggy, it crashed a few times, and it's clear that it's an iOS port. You open up stuff like this, and you can see iOS buttons. You open up this, you can see the iOS pop-up. It's actually not very pleasant to use, but it does work, so if you want to use it, you can. It's very comprehensive, but it's still a clear iOS port. There are also a lot of cool apps that they included. There's Game Hub, which allows you to download games that you can play with other people. It's just a nice way to see all these apps. Of course, all the apps open up to Samsung Apps, their proprietary app store. They also included a very nifty help app. It allows you to learn how things work, and it's been a big help for me when I couldn't figure out a few little S Pen things, but it's mostly made for the new users, and I think this will benefit them a lot, so I'm very glad they put it in. Then there's, of course, Smart Remote by Peel. It allows you to use this tablet as an IR blaster. I haven't set it up because I only have one non-Samsung TV in this house, and unfortunately the Peel app does not support it for whatever reason. It is a very strange model, let's put it at that, but I know that the Peel remote actually does work for a lot of people. The IR blaster is right here, and it's awesome. You can basically control your TV from your tablet without ever putting your tablet down and grabbing the remote. It's an awesome addition, and I know a lot of people have said they like it, even though it's a bit of a useless feature to many. And of course, the most important part of the Note software is the S Pen software. With the S Pen, you can do a lot of things, including take screenshots just by holding the button down and then tapping and holding on the screen. Then it allows you to edit it immediately if you do it with the S Pen. And there's a lot of features, including typing. If you want to, let's open up Google now. And if you want to type by writing, it has great handwriting recognition. So, for example, if I try to write droid dog, it gets it immediately. Of course, it puts in a space because it doesn't know the word, but handwriting recognition has been absolutely fantastic, and you can write as messy as you want and it'll actually still work. The S Pen also has a bunch of cool features. For example, you could do quick commands. I usually don't use them, but it's quite simple. And of course, you have the Air View, which you can hover over links. You can hover in the gallery and it'll show you a bunch of previews. The S Pen has a fantastic set of software. For example, you also have S Note. S Note is the standard note-taking app which allows you to draw whatever you want and take notes, save them. As you can tell, it has different levels of pressure. Push harder, it makes a thick line, lighter, and it makes a thin line. Also, a lot of apps support the S Pen now, including Sketchbook, so it's definitely an amazing set of software for the S Pen, which I have found to be incredibly useful. Now, the Note 8.0 does run what could be considered last-gen hardware. It has a 1.6 GHz Exynos 4 processor, which is a quad-core, the same that they put in the international Galaxy S3 and the Galaxy Note 2 pretty much everywhere. This is last-gen hardware technically only because the Galaxy S4 is now out with either a Snapdragon 600 or an Exynos 5, so the hardware isn't the newest in this tablet, especially for the $400 price point. However, this thing flies through any task. It never lags. There's a few stutters once in a while, but thanks to Jelly Bean, it's very, very smooth. Every app loads fast. The 2 gigabytes of RAM handle all apps just great. There's never any closing and reopening. In fact, Chrome is always running in the background, and I love how this tablet performs. Next to the Nexus 7, which is my, well, now second favorite tablet, it just destroys it. The Nexus 7 seems slow in comparison, and that thing has a quad-core Tegra 3. The Exynos 4 really shows how powerful it is on this device, much more than it does on the Note 2. So if you're worried about performance, you're going to get really great performance here. Now I know that cameras on a tablet are pretty much afterthoughts, but surprisingly the Note 8.0 does have a pretty decent rear camera. It's a 5 megapixel sensor and it is autofocus unlike many tablet cameras, but it does take half decent photos. You cannot compare it to something like a Galaxy S3 or a Galaxy S4, but if you need to take a photo real quick, it'll do the job in good light. In low light, of course, you're going to get horrible photos, but it'll do the job. However, I do believe that you should not be taking photos with a tablet unless you absolutely need to, so there's that. And it does have a front-facing camera, which you can use for video chatting and the like, and that does a decent job too. There's nothing amazing about the cameras, but for a tablet they're actually pretty good. They surprised me because other tablets had horrible cameras. For example, my Galaxy Tab 10.1 rear 3 megapixel sensor was an atrocity. So this is a really big step up. There's one place where the Note 8.0 does slightly disappoint, and that's battery life. Even though it has a fairly big 4600 mAh battery, the battery doesn't last so long. For example, my current battery is at 27% and I've been using it for only a few days. As you can see, 2 days, 4 hours with a screen on time of 3.5 hours. This is pretty standard fare. My Nexus 7 sometimes gets better on Android 4.2 after a factory reset, because the update from 4.1 to 4.2 made battery life horrible. However, there is one thing I can suggest to make battery life better. Go into Application Manager, find Google Maps, and disable it immediately. I have it disabled, and I recently tried this because Maps kills battery really fast. If you've never used it and you look into batteries, it takes up like 10-15% of your battery. Once I stopped it, battery life has actually improved a lot more and it's more comparable to the Nexus 7. It's not disappointing, but it's not the best battery life I've ever seen, so you should keep that in mind. However, with Maps disabled, the battery life has been a lot better and there hasn't been so much idle drain. Well, that's it for my Galaxy Note 8.0 review. In conclusion, this is a fantastic tablet. It has a nice screen. While it could be better, it's still pretty nice and it's not disappointing in any way. It has a really fast processor, plenty of RAM, plenty of features. The micro SD slot is great, the IR blaster is great, and it's an overall just fantastic package. It has a few flaws, like battery life could be better, and the hardware keys at the bottom are very annoying because when you hold it in landscape you constantly press them. However, the keys do respond to the S Pen, which is a big plus over stuff like the Galaxy Note 2. So overall the tablet is fantastic. However, you have to look at the price point. At $400 you're getting slightly last gen hardware that's still very capable and a 1280 by 800 display. So is it worth that $400? I'm not sure. The S Pen adds a ton of value, so if you like using the S Pen like I do, it's worth the money. However, if you don't need the S Pen and a lot of Samsung's features are gimmicks to you, then it's definitely not worth it. You might want to look at something different like the Nexus 7. The Nexus 7 at $200 is half the price and very, very comparable. Slower, screen is worse, but still very comparable. And at half the price, you really can't beat that. So it's up to you whether it's worth the money or not. For me, it very much is, because the S Pen is an incredible feature and I will constantly be using it more than I ever expected. So that's pretty much it. Stay tuned for more tablet videos. We're very excited to bring more tablet videos to Droid Dog. My name is Dima Aryeh, and have a great day.